But Native peoples are involved in capturing and selling and bartering Native captives. There are more Native Americans exported from North America to the West Indian colonies than there are African slaves imported to the North American colonies. So many of the sources that we have to work with, and I think this is where so many of the myths that inform the legacies that people are still struggling with today, many of the primary sources that we have to work with are sources that were written by white missionaries, white federal governmental officials, and white citizens from the Deep South. And often those sources that describe Native slaveholding practices in particular, Native economic practices in general, and slaveholding in particular, tell us as much about the, or if not more, about the author of those sources than they do about the actual subject.
For you Latinos out there, you know, I won't say Northern Kingdom because Northern Kingdom know who they are, and for the most part, I don't believe that any brother that's in the truth that's Northern Kingdom has a problem with the Southern Kingdom. But you Latinos and you Hispanics out there, me being of the Northern Kingdom, so-called Puerto Rican, Ephraim, you know, fuck you, the ones of you that don't like Judah, that have a problem with Judah, the so-called Negroes that are racist towards them, that give them a hard time, that look at them, you think you're better than them because you're lighter skinned. I say fuck you. May you die the death of the uncircumcised, you know, because those are our brothers. And even before the truth, Barakatah Yahweh Bashem Shai, I always knew that, even though I couldn't prove it. I always knew that so-called Puerto Ricans, so-called blacks were the same. I just didn't know how to prove it. But there was a conviction in my spirit, there was a conviction in my soul. So much so that the manager that I had in the world gave me a bunch of titles for songs, and one of the titles he gave me was called America Hates Us Too. You know, and that America Hates Us Too was coming from a standpoint, because part of the words was, you know, a Latin revolutionary. So the manager asked me, why did you put Latin revolutionary? I said, because it's coming from my perspective. You know, and the perspective was that, you know, I had a beef with Judah. Well, I didn't know they were Judah back then, because they seemed to cut us out the picture, you know, and like we didn't suffer like y'all suffered. No, we suffered just as bad as you did, you know, and in some cases even worse because we were suffering longer. So that was like my main beef, you know. Don't forget about us. We catch an L too, but I never had a problem with Judah. You know, I always knew that we were connected somehow. I never thought about, my father, you know, he had bad experiences with Judites, so, you know, he had his prejudices against Judah, but I never had any problems with Judah, you know. So that's why I said them people, them Latinos and, you know, Hispanics that got a problem with Judah, so-called Negroes, fuck you. May you die the death of the uncircumcised. And that doesn't go for all of us. You know, because you have some so-called Latinos, Hispanics that rock with Judah, that rock.
Shalom, shalom. First off, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone that taught us His truth and will well. And salutations to you, hopeful elect, pushing His truth in all sincerity. This is Brother Yahweh. Come to you now, listen to the spirit power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. This is another lesson through the spirit. Following the spirit, came across a few videos, alright, that basically show that you so-called Latinos, you so-called natives, and you so-called Negroes are all connected and are all one under the curses. Okay, this is a different style, a different spirit of the whole. You know, they have that slogan called "Me Too" that women came up with. You know, because they suffered too from, you know, grape and things like that, man. But this is is for slavery. You so-called Latinos and you so-called Native Americans, you went through just as bad slavery as the Negroes. You are not better than them. Those are your brothers. Y'all all went through the same exact shit. Let me rephrase that. Y'all all went through the same exact ships. Ships. Okay? You were put on cargo slave ships just like the Negroes. So much so that it spearheaded and started the slave trade of the so-called Negroes. So for you to be overly obsessed, I'm going to speak real quick to you women of wanting to dye your hair blonde, associate yourself with being white American because you think white is pure. I'm in the same spirit Apostle Ramla just said, fuck you. Fuck you, okay? For those of you that have any hatred towards the so-called Negroes, all right, and you look down on them because there's too many of y'all still on that same bullshit when you rode the same ship. Okay? You rode the same ship, man. You're not white. All right? You're in the same curses as the so-called Negroes. This happened to y'all too, man. These images you see in here. This is what the slave ships y'all was put on. Okay? Y'all were put to the slave ships to the West Indies to work sugarcane plantations from the Spaniards and the Portuguese first. All right, they spearheaded that whole slave trade over here on the West, and many, in the upwards of billions of Native Americans to this day are currently living and residing in Europe. Okay, living and residing in Europe, man, and were started and shipped over to Spain and Portugal. So you got a lot of indigenous people, and that culture is over there, and a lot of them are mixed into the Caribbean islands too. I was just speaking with a Ephraimite, this Jake, at work, and I was just picking his mind because I was talking about making a visit to Puerto Rico, and he's from Puerto Rico. He speaks very little Spanish. I consider myself Northern Kingdom as well. I first came into the truth. I was thinking probably Gad, Elder my lawyer KC just said through the spirit. He said you were Gadite last camp, so I might be it. But I was thinking too that I possibly could be Ephraim. As far as some of the curses that I've experienced of fitting that tribe. But I very well could fit Gad either way. So I'm more than likely either Gad or Ephraim. But nonetheless, Northern Kingdom in general is my particular tribe. Okay, and I was talking to him, and he was telling me about the history of all the different peoples that are in Puerto Rico, and I knew it was diverse, but I didn't know it was that vast diverse. Like it's so many different Israelite tribes that reside in Puerto Rico, man. Okay, he was going to the history of how the slaves got there. He knew it, man. He knew about the Arawakan Indians. He was saying that there was like basically 6 or 7 different indigenous tribes that lived in that region. Okay, and that goes right in hand with what you're seeing in that first video clip. Okay, there were more slaves put on ships from what the woman said in that video going out of America than they were coming in, because we all know about the slaves that were coming in from the coast of Africa, the so-called Negroes. We all know that history very well. That's the most recent slave trade that everybody has photographic evidence. There's even some real old first films of some of the slaves that were working the plantations. We have that tangible stuff. But you have to understand that the Spanish slave trade, okay, that happened, a few hundred years before the transatlantic slaves of the so-called Negroes. And it happened so long ago, they did not have You know, the photograph wasn't invented yet. Photography. Okay, so you didn't really have pictures of them. You know, photography just got invented towards like the tail end of that particular slave trade. But like Apostle Ramla said, you know, they went through it too, man. Okay, we went through it as well, and it was in the upwards of millions. Just Puerto Rico alone, that region. There was an article that I used to bring out time to time. That website is now gone. Man, I wish I would have took some more screenshots and saved some of the photos from it, because it was very edifying, and it stated that back in the 1500s, 1400s, the estimated population of the Caribbean islands, or specifically Puerto Rico, was 100 million Taínos, or native indigenous people there. By the time Christopher Colon got done, and it was about, you know, getting closer to the 1600s, you had probably 500s in the population of hundreds. So you went from 100 millions to down to like hundreds that were left. I'll say it again, man. You went from 100 million down to like hundreds, just a few hundred, like 500 that were remaining in that area. That's how much genocide, rape, robbing, and pillaging went on. They had like a buffet of slaughter, torture, rape to all those indigenous people. And you got the audacity of these people today that call themselves Hispanics that want to parade around and check a box that they're fucking white. I can't stand seeing Latinos walk around here with dyed blonde hair. And I just rewatched the movie Through the Spirit that popped up a couple times. It's from DreamWorks Animation. A lot of us, my generation, seen this as kids. It's a pretty popular movie. It's a pretty good film. It is an animation called The Road to El Dorado. And you rewatch that film, and they throw you some little gems here going into the history. The main characters, okay, basically are Spaniards. You know, they were thieves, and they were basically trying to escape from getting locked up and going to jail. And they jumped as stowaways on a ship. They came across a map, okay, and they end up going to South America, where you had the Aztecs and the Mayans, man, you know. And that basically shows the spirit of Esau, Edom. They even had a Spaniard slave trader that went there to go conquer that land, okay. And it was just a spirit that this came across, because I seen that video clip that I shared at the beginning of this lesson. I seen that quick clip of Elder Apostle Ramlat speaking on that, and then this movie popped up. So that's why I'm doing this lesson. Okay, this is the spirit to let you know, you so-called Latinos and you so-called Native Americans, you are brothers of the so-called Negroes. You are not better than them. You went through the same shit, man, and it's right there in your face. Okay, they've had movies like this that's out that kind of show you a little quick glimpse, a child version, watered down of, genocide and slave traders coming to your lands and putting you on slave ships, man. Okay. This is the book of Deuteronomy 28:68. It says, "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." I mean, no man shall set you free. All right, and there's a lot of ancient relics over here in the land of Americas, even like different things that have been dug up, to include the Grand Canyon, where you have evidence that many of those mountains and rock formations are not mountains. They're like gigantic statues that are carved. You got ancient Sphinx still over here. You got ancient pyramids all over this land, North and South America. So this is the land spiritually called Egypt. All right? Spiritually called Egypt. Look on the back of your dollar bill. Why they got a pyramid there? Okay? You got many United States cities that named after Egyptian cities, such as Memphis. Okay? You got the Luxor Pyramid in Vegas. Okay, you have another city in Illinois called Cairo and Little Egypt. This is the place spiritually called Egypt. So you know, we had so-called Negroes that were brought here by ships, but also in Egypt, Egypt was known for hardcore slavery of the Israelites. So on this side, you had slaves being exported out too. So you have a lot of quote unquote natives or people that identify themselves as Latino, you know, that are living currently in like places like China and have no idea that their ancestry goes back to indigenous native over here in the Americas, because about 1,000 years ago your ancestors were put on slave ships, or not even 1,000 years ago, like just like half a thousand, like 500, 600 years ago, man. Y'all were put on ships and shipped over to all these other countries and traded. So this is, you know, you have Israelites scattered across four corners of the earth, all over the place, man. And this scripture right here, when it says you shall go into Egypt again with ships, it's talking about the cargo slave ships I just showed you pictures of. This is a prophecy that only sticks to the Hebrew Israelites. It was a curse for breaking the law, statutes, and commandments. Okay? And when you go into the same chapter and you go down to verse 45, it says here, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of Yahweh thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder upon thy seed forever. Okay? So, forever, this thing would follow. So, fast forward, since this prophecy was written, a couple thousand years later, you had the Spanish slave trade, Portuguese slave trade. Then you had the transatlantic slave trade. And thus the slave trades that happened to all the tribes. All the tribes, man. As a curse. And you see in the last verse of this chapter is that exact slave ship. So yes, you know, you guys are all the same people. You're just different tribes of the same people. You know, look at this, man. Here's all of our captivities that we've all suffered in. Egyptian captivity. Then you have the Assyrian captivity. During the Assyrian captivity is when you so-called Latinos and you so-called natives that are called those people today, that's when y'all got over here to the Americas. And the Bible references as the land of Arsareth. Okay? So that's when you got on cargo slave ships over here. The Northern Kingdom went off first. So they got put right into captivity again. And put on the cargo slave ships, and that's when they got over here to the Americas, man. And you've been living here ever since. Okay, then you had the Babylonian captivity, Persian captivity, Greek captivity, Roman captivity. And then you have American captivity. So then when it came to the American captivity, you went through it yet again. And there's a lot of history, like I said, a lot of stuff that's been hidden, like destroyed. Books have been burned and destroyed. Like when they came over here to the Americas, there's been a lot of things extensively gone to hide their actions. So who knows how many captivities and stuff that was going over here in the Americas before what we can read that's been documented today, you know, has been kept. I'm sure if, you know, you go to those lands, those regions, and you come in contact with historians and people that speak their languages and you learn that language, there's probably even more history you can dig up. But they're still finding like artifacts to this day, man, of a lot of stuff. Like even like recently, there was an Instagram video that popped up. They found Roman helmets over here in the Americas. And apparently the Roman Empire made their way to the Americas and physically got in contact with the indigenous people over here and had a big ass war and fought and got their asses handed to them. And they just archaeologically just discovered all of that. Check this out.
On a golf course in North Rome. Roman battle helmets were just discovered on a golf course in North Carolina last week, and it's going to rewrite all we know about America, the history of it. These are all the helmets that have been dug up so far, and one of the world's top scientists, Dr. Remy Demi, said this changes everything, and there's so much more we need to learn. The golf course is on the coastal regions of North Carolina. I don't want to reveal the exact location because the golf course owner is TO'd, because we've got to dig up the whole golf course now. We found spears, we found swords, we also found Native American arrowheads, and it looks like it was a battle between the Romans and the Native Americaners that were native to the region back then, and it looked like they decimated the entire Roman army. It looked like a massacre. And so I'll post more footagers. I'm going to go there tomorrow, film a ton of the dig and what we're finding, but it is wild. And like I said, we're just beginning now to understand the history of America, and this is one factoid that's going to change all that we know about it.
Okay, so with that said, man, when you see this list here, I wouldn't put it past that they still kept going to captivity from some of these other empires too, right over here on the shores of America. Because we just know from what in school, what they said, what they document of when Christopher Columbus landed here. But that's just one little bit of history. That's the only thing that's shared. Like going to some of these other nations and looking up different records and scrolls, if we can get our hands on some of that stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if all these different empires, they all made it to the Americas too. Because you could find in the accounts when King Solomon had, traded peacocks and things like that and gold from the land of Osiris, which peacocks are native to, I believe, South America only, if I'm not mistaken. So there you have it, man. So this is a lot of stuff just scratching the surface, man. Our people can't escape the curses. Deuteronomy 28 goes into everything that would happen to our people when we didn't listen. And sure enough, our people did not listen, man. But there's so much stuff that we can only know what's been documented. We can only know what's been written down in books and accounted for, and what's been released by Esau Edom publicly for us to find. But what did the Lord say? Psalms 85 says, truth shall spring out of the earth. Okay, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. So truth springing out of the earth, man. All these artifacts being discovered, finding ancient Paleo-Hebrew writings and stuff. It's all connected. Take a look at the Lost Luna Stone. The Lost Luna Stone found in New Mexico in America. And do you know what's on this stone? These are the 10 Commandments etched in stone in Paleo-Hebrew. It's been dated to be thousands of years old. What are the 10 Commandments doing etched in stone in America? I thought that the ancient Hebrews lived only in, the region of Israel, right? Is that what you would be taught in school? Wrong, man. The natives were brung over here. You have the Ohio Decalogue Stone in Ohio. More Hebrew found on there. I mean, there's the Back Creek Stone. There's so much, man. And the Back Creek Stone says to Judah, or for Judah, to Judah written on there. Okay, you got the name of the Lord etched in various other places around in New Mexico, same region where the Lost Luna Stone is found. So, you see, you're all the same people. We all the same people, man. It's time for this prophecy to be fulfilled. This is Ezekiel 37:15. It says, the word of Yahweh came again unto me, saying, moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it, for Judah, and for the children of Israel his companions. Then take another stick, write upon it, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel and his commandments, and his companions, Salakia. And join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thy hand. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, will thou not show us what thou meanest by these? Say unto them, thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. Okay, so the true tribes are going to unite and come together. All right, and then fast forward, this is what you have today. You got Israelite camps popped up with so-called Latinos and so-called Negroes standing together teaching with one stick. They got that sign, man, with all the tribes written on it. Okay, you see? You got that Akim, man, standing boldly. So it's starting with the brothers and the apostles, man, that's been teaching and laboring. So now the Spirit is getting on, Northern Kingdom to stop the bullshit and get off your ass, man, and link up with your brothers. The Spirit's also getting on Judah to link up with the brothers of the Northern Kingdom. Start becoming that one stick. You see? So, hey, man, this is the Spirit, man. The Spirit is moving. If you're a so-called Latino, if you're a so-called Native American, you're a Hebrew Israelite. All right, that's your real nationality, your real heritage. If you're so-called Negro, you are a Hebrew Israelite. And y'all all need to stand up with each other, unite, the one thing Esau fears, and stand for the Lord, man. That's it. All right, so with that, Lord's will, this lesson is edifying. I'm going to close out, give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Shemi El Shai, by Shema Kakadash. Double honors to our apostles and elders, great millstone, touch his truth and will well. And citation, hopefully, push his truth and honest sincerity. Shalom.